What's up, world? This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. I want to welcome you back to Family Talk with the man, the myth, the legend, my pops, Wayne Carter. What's going on, pops? How are you?
Oh, doing good, doing good. I just was thinking how much I just enjoyed hanging out with you guys yesterday.
I was thinking the same thing, man. It was a beautiful day, and I don't really know exactly where we were at as far as what mountain or trail. I just know we were right there in Swanee, pretty much on the campus of the University of the South, which just has a. Anytime I'm over there, I'm just like, man, what a beautiful campus and a great
Yeah,
place to kind of explore your academic interests and stuff like that.
yeah,
So I appreciated y'all getting me over there and hanging out a little bit. Um, Well, so once again, we had to take a little break. I had some stuff last week I had to do. And so, catching back up, we were talking about your life in Fayetteville, North Carolina, when you were stationed out there at Pope Air Force Base, which is part of the Fort Bragg complex. Um, and, you know, the air traffic controller thing that wasn't really a big part of your life, I guess, after your enlistment. So I really want to know: is there anything that you kind of want to add as far as maybe that job that was really important to you, or any of those technical aspects that we hadn't talked about, or maybe we mentioned that was kind of interesting, or maybe taught you something that lasted with you, or anything like that?
well, it could be and was a stressful job from time to time, and I think one of the things that I learned from that is everybody I think needs to be involved with something that is grounding to you, um, religiously, morally, to get outside of whatever it is you're doing. I say this to law enforcement guys when I do uh, in service training with those guys, that they need to be involved in something outside of their job. Because if all you see is that, you think that's all society is. And the same thing as an air traffic controller, I think if all you do is pressure and the complexity of that job, uh, I think it what probably I wouldn't doubt to see that the air traffic controllers don't drink more, don't smoke more, and don't have more mental health issues than a lot of other people.
So you think it was really, and we talked about that last time, kind of in all of your travels, how those community aspects was really important for you to have that constant and that familiar relationships. And it sounds like what we might call today prevents burnout, right?
Yeah,
Is if you just kind of are all work and no play and you don't have any outside interests, you can get burnt out in any role or any organization. And that's something that's
yeah.
important.
I think that's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. Well, so, and with that, how long did you kind of stay at that position vocationally?
Oh, 3.5 years. Every what time I was, active duty with the Air Force.
And that's just what you did. It was just that constant role.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I can see how that might create some monotony in the workforce, yeah, or in the workday. Hmm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Okay, well, another thing that was interesting that you said last time, you talked about we were talking about the city of Fayetteville, and you talked a little bit about how the downtown area had changed and stuff like that. And when I went back and listened to our conversation, I was just wondered, is there may be some commonalities of what you said as far as, like, kind of being a rough area with strip joints and liquor stores and pawn shops and type of deal. Is that something that you found to be common of maybe military towns, so to speak, or What do you, what about that?
Uh, yes, in a sense, we when I later on when I went in the army, uh, we it was kind of a known. If you got uh, somebody under you that was late or somebody under you that wasn't there, the first place you want to go look is where they're not supposed to be.
The bar
Uh,
somewhere?
yeah, if it's a off limits place, that's where they're going to be.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
I just remember.
we had the same thing. I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, or it just come to me, but I think it was the same kind of atmosphere in Lower Broad and downtown Nashville. So it wasn't just the military.
Yeah, we talked about that, and Nashville's kind of got a different history with some of that stuff as far as where it's at on the river and the loggers and some other kind of different reasoning for that. But I just thought about that, and I thought about some of the different places that I've visited. I've been to a few military towns, you might say, and I'm not going to call out any cities because I don't mean no harm. I'm just really kind of interested in the facts, I guess. But it just tends to be a lot of tattoo shops, a lot of used car dealerships with scat packs and lifted up Jeeps. You know what I'm saying? Liquor stores and pawn shops. I was just wondering if your kind of experience, if that's what Fayetteville, or maybe there was that commonality in those types of cities that you experienced.
Well, if you think about the the culture of that of the military town, you've got 18, 19, 20, early 20-year old young people. And back in my time, it was more young men than young women, but that, that's kind of evolved, that are a lot of times away from home for the first time and freedom to choose and do those things. And, um, I don't know if that's that kind of a normal thing to expect when you got that group close together versus if you're out here in hometown USA where your family is, and you got certain norms you're supposed to be expected, and if you get in that kind of trouble, your mom and dad ain't gonna like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So there's a bit of a natural market with.
yeah,
So there's a need, whether it's really a need or not, but there's somebody that's willing to purchase these services. So naturally, folks that offer these services
yeah.
show up, right? Is there anything else to it? Would it maybe have been encouraged for folks that maybe going to war and stuff to indulge in these things to kind of pacify uh, the intensity of what may be to come or what they may have had to deal with in the past?
And I can only tell you from my experience. I don't think that I experienced that being something that was encouraged, but it may not have been discouraged either. And I think you may have hit the nail on the head. You got the anticipation of if you're going to war, which was during the Vietnam era, that point, you don't know if you're going to get back, and then when you're coming back, a lot of post traumatic stress stuff going on that we didn't address in those days. I think we do a lot better job of addressing that now than we did back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of found that interesting, and but ultimately, you said Fayetteville has experienced some gentrification, and we could spend a long time talking about what gentrification means. But I'll just it's not always bad. Gentrification can be a bad thing. It is a bad thing when it displaces local people, but it is not always a bad thing when it brings in uh, improvements that local folks are also willing to or are able to gain the benefits from. And so, it's good to hear that Fayetteville's looking nice down there, and like Nashville is kind of cleaned up a little bit, or at least pushed it maybe to the margins a little bit more. Which there's another conversation there, I guess. Another thing that you said that's kind of in that same line, because I was asking you kind of about these different cultures in these different cities that you lived in, and you said the main thing that you observed was really the difference in the military community versus the civilian community. And I just want to see if you could talk to me a little bit more about what you meant by that.
Well, I kind of alluded to it just a second ago. The military community, you got predominantly young people, young adults that are separated from families that they grew up in, the communities they grew up in, and the norms that they understood and grew up in, where they come from. Now they're placed in a situation where they have a lot more freedom to choose things than they would have. And so I think that develops a different culture.
Yeah.
And of course, the idea of dying, we don't like to think about dying, but if you're in the military, that is a thing you think about.
How did that affect you? You talk about these young men, and I guess we think a lot of times, single men, right? Would that be
Yeah,
accurate? A lot.
yeah.
So it's a little bit different. You were married, and there was obviously some with families. How did that affect you in the domestic life?
Well, I think it was a very positive thing for me to be married. I will tell you, I don't think I was above any of this other activity that was going on had I been single and out there. But being
Yeah.
married, you know, I, I wasn't at a bar. I wasn't going out looking for these things, and had some, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I needed to get an education. And so rather than being at the bars and doing that kind of stuff, I pursued education.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. And I just think about it right now, and probably should have talked about it before. But did you always kind of want a family and envision yourself? I know you grew up in with both of your folks and with a brother and a kind of a traditional family. Did you always see yourself eventually having that, or did you have any kind of want for a family, or was that not really even on the radar?
It was not on the radar.
Okay.
It was not, uh, not that I didn't want to have a family, but at that point in life, that was not a consideration.
Well, I mean, do you think, like, because me, when I was younger, I know that I always kind of envisioned myself having a family. Now, I didn't know how exactly that was necessarily going to work out, but I always, looking back on my life now, I've always had these strong family values, and a lot of that is obviously because of my traditional family values and all that stuff. But like, I just kind of maybe not even wanting it, but just kind of expected that I would have a family. Did you kind of look at it that way, or did you?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. Not. I think at that time, again, I expected to always be in a church family. But as far as having children and stuff to be responsible for 24/7, that was not on my radar screen.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right. So let's switch gears and let's go back and talk about your academic career. Now, you got your associates from Golden Gate Community College, which had a partnership with the Air Force out of, I guess, the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland,
It's
somewhere.
Golden Gate University was the main campus, which
Okay.
it's still a pretty big deal in San Francisco.
Okay.
Um, Matter of fact, I was looking at the history of this judge that I didn't know that I was in front of last Friday, and she went to Golden Gate Law School. University Law School. So it was a
Well, obviously, probably a pretty big institution then to have this satellite program
yeah,
going on all across the country, right?
yeah, yeah,
I would think. So you got your associates there, which was pretty quick because you already had that first year at MTSU,
yeah.
and then
I
you
actually had 3 semesters at MTSU, and I
three.
just liked the semester being able to get that. So yeah, it was pretty
Okay,
quick. Yeah,
knocked that out pretty easily. Um, and then you went to, at the time, Methodist College, now Methodist University in
right.
Fayetteville. Tell me a little bit. We've talked about it before, but tell me a little bit about your experience there, and let's talk about how you went from this business kind of mindset, or really not having an idea of what you wanted to do, to getting into political science.
Well, I think a good part of it was again not being a normal student. And I say a normal student is one that maybe lived on campus or, was, I was a little bit older than the average student at that point. And so I didn't really blend in with, the college scene per se. So I went to, my focus was to get my degree. And so, I'd spend time, maybe in between time, I would be out here reading and doing stuff and not socializing with the younger students. Um, and so I started taking the political science classes at MTSU, and I liked political science. And so I was kind of going in that direction uh, just because that was kind of where I was going. But I met the professor, Dr. John Tobler, was the political science dean. And it wasn't a big department at all. In fact, I think the political science and history departments kind of went together. But he took a liking to me, I think. And I felt like he did. And he kind of inspired me to go ahead and follow the political science uh, degree. Uh, and I just enjoyed his classes. I excelled in his classes. I was not a great student, and I'm not overly intelligent, but I enjoyed those classes, and I think I did more reading because I enjoyed them, and so I did pretty good. And in the political science department, what we did was what you and I do a lot of is discuss political theory, discussing how it affects the world scenarios and those. So it's just really interesting to me. So,
Well, and I know, and this may be an unfair question since I didn't really prep you for it, but what do you remember, I guess, about the coursework? What classes you like, what the classes were, and kind of what a synopsis of what would have been covered in them? Do you remember any of that?
yeah, well, like comparative governments was an interesting one. All that we are really taught, and I'm not sure it's taught a lot, but when I grew up, you took a civics class in high school and kind of learned how fundamental stuff is, but you never understood um, where all that came from. The theory behind the Constitution, the John Locke's, those people that helped develop our forefathers' thoughts, how important the the Christian Reformation was in the development of at least Western thought. And then if you start looking at Eastern thought and Mid-Eastern thought and compare those, and then you get into some of the ideas, okay, when we have a military issue, how's the other guy looking at it? Those was I just really enjoyed those.
Man, so it sounds like there's, and obviously political science is a pretty, I guess, a broad discipline. Would you agree with that?
I'd say, yeah.
And so government is obviously within that. And so did any like public administration classes
Yeah,
fall within there?
we did have a requirement for that. I can't remember particularly any of the details about it, but yeah, and that was like I said, I enjoyed those. I didn't have a hard time with those classes. I don't remember particulars about that class, but yeah,
Right. And so you mentioned Locke a little bit, and he does come up in our conversations a lot. So was that strictly in this political sense, or did you get into uh, philosophy any with that study?
yeah, we didn't get it. I don't remember getting into philosophy.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. So what else about your experience with at Methodist? And I understand, being a non-traditional student, I guess is what you call that. I was always kind of a non-traditional student, so I definitely identify with that. And I don't know, it might make the whole thing easier. It can be more stressful when you have a family. I had children when I was in school, um, and that can be difficult. But it also can provide you that focus of, hey, I'm here to do this thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it was kind of like going to the bars at Fayetteville. I didn't go to the social stuff because I wasn't trying to find a mate. You
Yeah,
know.
right, right, right. Cool. So I feel like we're kind of ending your time in Fayetteville. Would you agree? Is there anything else that we need to highlight or that we may have missed during that
Yeah, there was a
experience?
very important part of Fayetteville and Methodist College. This guy named Glenn Blackburn. Um Methodist. My last two semesters before I graduated, Methodist began an ROTC program. Captain Glenn Blackburn was over that ROTC program at Methodist, and we were associated with Campbell College and it just in the ROTC program, but it was just starting at Methodist, and I had no interest in that. I had my concept was I was going to do my gig in the Air Force and get out and never see the military again in my life. Well, that didn't work out. Glenn Blackburn came up to me. I was in uniform, uh, probably in between classes because I just got off work and had gone to class and had to wait, and I was reading. And he come up to me and struck up a conversation, and because he's Army, I'm Air Force, and we talked, and we became friends. And this would have been early in the fall semester. By the November time frame, in October November time frame, um, he suggested to me that, hey, you might want to switch over into the Army, and I think I can get you a commission if you want to get into ROTC.
And so as commission, you mean what does a
An officer,
commission
become
mean?
an officer.
To become an officer.
Yeah,
And so that's a pretty a big jump for where from where you're at least from
yeah,
where what we had talked about, right?
yeah. I was an enlisted soldier. I made it up to E4, which is a
Four. I know you said
lower
somewhere
middle
around a
rank.
three. Okay, you
Yeah,
say you was a four when you got out.
yeah.
Okay.
And so we talked about that a little bit, and your mother and I discussed it a bit, and what it was going to be that I was going to have to get into the ROTC program right then, and Captain Blackburn was good. He said, "I'll, you can get in November, December. We'll count you for a whole semester if you get in now, and then if you got to go the next semester in the spring, that'll give you 2 semesters of ROTC. You need to go to summer camp for the officers and get commissioned."
Okay.
And I thought, well, and your mother thought it was a good idea, and so I did that. And so I got out of the Air Force in December. I had actually signed up, and it was about 2 months or a month and a half where I was both in ROTC and in the Air Force.
Okay, and so this is kind of how many years have you been in Fayetteville at this point?
About
And
3.
about three. And so where are you at Methodist? Are you in
Yeah,
your
so I'm going to graduate that spring too.
okay? So you're in your final
Final
year
year. Yeah.
and of both Methodist University and your enlistment,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
enlistment actually expired before you graduated. You had another semester because it was
Yeah.
in
Actually,
December because you had that.
my enlistment would have gotten me out in like February of
Okay,
that spring, and I would have graduated. We'd have been a couple of months there,
months out.
graduated. So I got an early release from the Air Force in December
And
to
that was
be able
because of
to get
that
into the
time.
ROTC program.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna say God has been with me and provided, and people have been very nice to me. I've uh, generally people have helped me out along the way because the Air Force didn't have to release me early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glenn Blackburn didn't have to become my friend and got me into that. So that
Yeah.
that's just the way it kind of worked out. Well,
Yeah.
so I became. It was funny. I became the commander of the ROTC program that spring semester. Uh, it was a leadership role, which was not difficult for me. I didn't realize that. I really didn't realize that I was a leader until Glenn Blackburn sort of matured and cultured that thing within me. So I owe a lot to Glenn getting me in, and then I graduated Methodist that summer. Went to the ROTC uh, camp for the cadets to become a commissioned officer. Well, that was at Fort Bragg, and so it was
Okay.
not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, so I want to stop right there because and I'm glad that you brought that up, and I want to kind of maybe revisit that a little bit more, at least that relationship and kind of the mechanics of that and what all kind of had to happen for you with the ROTC and kind of ending up your Air Force service and maybe talk about that relationship a little bit more and then what it looked like going into the officers program. I'd like to dig into that and with a little bit more time, if that's all right.
Sure.
All right, cool. Well, I appreciate your time again, Pops. I mean, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. This is once again Family Talk, Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. Peace and love.